Alright, with Access open and we have our Backstage view present to us, we're going to start working on our Chatham database. To start this, we're going to click the blank desktop database. So you're going to click that item and then that blank database will open up as needed. We're going to give it a name, and the name we're going to give that is Chatham. And that will replace it. You can select where you want to save this. You want to create a folder for saving all of your Access databases, you can create a folder for that. I'm just going to keep that in my Documents for now, and then we'll work from there. But you can save it wherever it is going to be easily accessible for you so that you don't forget where you're saving your database. I'm going to go ahead and click Create now to get started with our database, and we have our table view open up because we're not going to work with our database if we don't have any tables to start with. So we're going to start building our table. Now, since we are using Office 2013, if you look up here in the top, you'll see that our database has the proper .accdb file extension, because that makes it saved into an Access 2007 to 2013 file format. So any version of Access from 2007 up will be able to be viewed in Microsoft Access. Now, if we had Microsoft Access 2003 and we tried to open up a database from 2007 or 2013, 2016, we would not be able to open that because the file format is not accepted in Access 2003. Alright, so let's rename this ID field that we have listed here. And to do that, there's several different ways, but for starting out, what we're going to do is we're just going to right-click on here, scroll down here in our pop-up, and you see it says Rename Field. Select that. Now we have the ability to change that. We're going to change that to Visit ID. Once you're done with that, you can just hit Enter, and it will be accepted, and you'll move on to the next. Alright, now we have a field name. Let's go ahead and give our field a proper data type. So let's change the data type for the Visit ID field. Now, to do that, we are going to go up in here to our ribbon, and in our fields ribbon we're going to go to our formatting group, and you see that we have options for data types, and our data type is set for auto number. We want that to be short text. We're going to drop down this arrow, see short text available, click that. Now we have applied short text data type to our Visit ID field. Now, as you see here, if we want to add more fields, it says click to add, so we could continue to build on more and more fields in our table. But for now, let's just move on to the next step. But before we do that, I want to make a quick note of the unique checkbox here. You can see that that is now there in our field validation group. This checkbox is selected because the Visit ID field assumes the characteristics of the default primary key field, ID, including the fact that each value in the field must be unique. Now, because this checkbox is selected, no two records in our table here will be allowed to have the same value in the Visit ID field because it is set to be our primary key. Now let's add some more fields here to our table that we're going to call Visit. But before we name our table here to Visit, let's go ahead and add some more fields because this Visit ID field is a little lonely. So take a look here at the Add Delete group in our Fields tab. Once you've got that located, click the Short Text button. You see that listed right here. And you see that a new Access has added a new field for us called Field 1 just to the right of our pre-existing field Visit ID field. Now we're going to call this one Patient ID. So just start typing as it's selected. Now that we've created that one, we're going to add another field, and we're going to call this the Visit Date field. Now, because, as in the name implies, it's a date data type, we are going to add the field with a date time data type, which is going to allow the field values in a variety of date and type formats. So let's go ahead and add that one now. So if we go up here to our add and delete grouping in our fields tab, we can select the date and time field type or data type, and we are going to call that visit date. Now we're going to use another of our data types, and our next field we're going to do is we're going to call this one reason, and it's going to be a short text field. So our fourth field here we're going to add, it's going to be short text, and we're going to call that reason. Once you've completed that one and hit enter, we are going to do our fifth and final field, and we're going to call this walk-in, and the data type we're going to use for this is our yes/no. So if you click yes/no up in your add and delete group, and we're going to call that walk-in. And you see that that replaces the field name field 1. Go ahead and hit enter, and now you've got the first 5 fields for your first table completed. You'll notice here, since we selected the yes/no field type or data type, that we have the checkbox available that we can click on or uncheck in case we have a visitor or customer who is a walk-in. We can have a selection now that we can make using our mouse or spacebar. Well, now that we have our table design, we are ready to start adding data to create records in our tables. And those records, the data for that will go across each of those fields that we created, those 5 fields. And then when we enter our data in here, you'll see that we have a row selector icon here, so you can be able to select the row. But we have, as we create one, we'll have the ability to create another record. And you'll always be able to know which record you're on down here. If you need to jump records, you can use the navigational tools listed down below. Here is the data we are going to input into our table. You can see I have all of the proper fields and the data that needs to go in for each record. So let's go ahead and start putting that data in now. I'm going to go ahead and put the value for visit ID for this one to be 1550. Then I'm going to just hit tab, or you can use your arrow keys, whatever you want to use, to go on to our patient ID field to then start putting in information in that as well. Our patient ID is 22549. Our visit date for that patient was 12/1/15. You see you have the calendar icon here that you can click on to select your date as well. So we have options here where we can go all the way back. If we want to do this manually, I go to December, and I said that the date was December 1st, and there is the date I needed. So I can hit, the reason is the next one. We're going to type in influenza, and we can tab over to our next field. Now we can check our box if they were a walk-in or not. And as you notice, this is not checked. So our default value for this yes/no field is no. So therefore the checkbox is going to be initially empty. If a customer is a walk-in, then we would simply insert a check mark there by clicking the box or hitting the space bar to indicate that as a yes in our field. So now we have our check, and we're going to say that they were a walk-in patient. Now at any time, if I make a mistake, and I can always go back and fix my mistake. As an example, I could uncheck that and say that they were not a walk-in. If I misspelled influenza, I could go back in and click on that field and correct the spelling. This is completely editable, so anytime you make a mistake, you can always go back in and fix it. Go ahead now and enter the remaining fields, the remaining records in your table so that you have your table completed for this stage. Now with all those records created, I'm going to go ahead and close the shutter bar. So I'm going to use the shutter bar open close button here and just give us more viewing space. And as you notice, your reason field here does not show all of the values to be fully displayed. So one thing you can do to fix that is just like in Excel. If you go up here in between the fields and you see where it changes to that double arrow, once it does that, just double click and it will expand it to allow for the longest value to be displayed. Therefore we can see all of our data. And when you're submitting your assignments, make sure that you do that. Or if you're working on a table and a business, make sure you do that so that all the information can be viewed. Now if you have an area where you're putting like paragraph type information in, obviously that would just be ridiculous. But for something where you need to see your reasons, make sure that all the data is visible. Now if you remember from Excel, or if you've never used Excel, when you do that, when you have that auto expand like that, or even collapse, that is what's called best fit. So that when you're resizing a column like this, using that type of format, so it's wide enough to display the longest visible value in the column, including your field name up there, that is called best fit. And you will use that many, many times. Well, it's great. We have a table. We've put some records in there. Let's go ahead and save and name our table, and we're going to call it Visit. So if you go up to your quick access toolbar here at the top, you see the diskette item representative of an old floppy disk. Go ahead and click that, which is called the Save button, and you should get a Save As dialog box that will open up. Once that opens up, you have the ability to give it a name, and as I said, we're going to call this table Visit. And then you can click OK to save that name. Then you see up here on our tab, it is now showing a name of Visit. If we expand our open close shutter, you can see our table now is given the name that we gave it just now when we did our table save.